Now if I let it die, it dies instantly if I let off the fuel. If I don't turn the key all the way back, it should start and run okay. Now, a lot of times, if I turn the key all the way off and then start it back up, now it's not going to do it. All right, well, you saw what it was doing. So I'm going to go over a few things and show you what I found or what I think I found, and then we'll go about getting that out and replacing it. So I want to show you what this has been this whole thing has been a mess. ShopKey Pro has been extremely unreliable with wire coloring, diagram, everything, any kind of information I need on this car is basically wrong on ShopKey Pro, which I know it's an older car, it's 2000. But, you know, people pay $180 a month for Mitchell or ShopKey Pro, and the wiring diagrams sometimes are completely wrong, or the component location or component testing. Just so many things are wrong on this car. According to ShopKey Pro, the ignition switch is still inside the steering column on this car, and it's not. Obviously, it's right here on the dash. It's right here. Lighting's kind of bad. But the key is on the dash, and the switch is hooked to that. And according to ShopKey Pro, it's still in the steering column. So it's just little things like that. It's frustrating me on this car. But I think I finally got it figured out, and I'm going to go over a few things, and then we'll go about replacing the part that I believe is bad. All right, so we'll get the ugly truth out of the way first. When this car first came into me last week, it was doing what you saw there. It would run real rough and try to die. If you didn't give it gas, it would die right away, and it would just cut out randomly. It got to the point where it was really bad when you were driving it. It would just go down the road. It would try to cut out on you, and that actually was something it wasn't doing. The guy that owns this car said, "Yo, it only does it when it's cold, and once you get it going, it's fine. It won't do it." Well, with me, I drove it twice. When I went to look at it, and both times it was trying to cut out of me on the street. So anyway, make a long story short, it would only do it every great once in a while. It's very hard to catch it doing it, and I should have put, long story short, I should have put a scope on the crank and cam signal, because I automatically thought when it was doing it, it was the crank signal. If you watch the tach, it goes right to zero, and then pops back up, and right to zero, and pops back up. So I thought, okay, it needs a crank signal. It's 20 years old. It's got over 200,000 miles on it. It's never had a crankshaft sensor put in it. So I went ahead and threw a crankshaft sensor in it, and the car ran great. Drove it for about 45 minutes, shut it off and on several times, never cut out, ran perfect. Came out throughout the day, started right up, didn't do it, ran perfect. I thought, great, it's fixed. So anyway, another long story short, I go take a shower. I was at the end of my day. Get in the car, take it back, because my car happened to be over at his house. And as soon as I get in it, it started acting up, and it did that for like 5 minutes straight, the longest I'd ever done it, actually, where I just couldn't keep it running unless I kept it gas, and then it would cut in and out. So no codes in the computer, nothing that would indicate a problem with anything. And I didn't think it was fuel, but I went ahead and put a fuel tester gauge on it, and it was not losing fuel pressure when it was doing it. And then I thought, well, maybe it's one of the 5-volt reference sensors pulling it down. On this car, there's only a couple. There's EGR, the TPS, the high pressure switch for the AC, the fuel pressure switch in the back by the gas tank, and the map sensor. So I had my wife crank on it, and every once in a while it would screw up, and I would kind of because it wouldn't pull the 5. I wasn't sure, but it wasn't, whatever the problem was, it was come and go real fast, and then you might be fine for a couple hours after that. So there'd be no point in testing normal way you would test for a 5-volt reference pull down, as far as just seeing if each sensor has 5 volts going to it, because when it was not messing up, it would have been fine anyway. So, make a long story short, again, I know I keep saying that. I guess I gotta stop saying that. This has been kind of a journey on this car, but I got it to mess up, and I went and was unplugging each sensor one by one, and still was running rough. And my wife noticed that every once in a while when she would, sorry about that, my battery went dead. So anyway, my wife had noticed when I was pulling those sensors off one by one and testing them, that every once in a while when she would turn the key to the start position, it would delay 2-3 seconds, and then all of a sudden it would start cranking. And then we noticed that when it would mess up, if we didn't turn the key all the way back, but just let it go to the run position and then turn it on, it would normally start back up and run fine. But if you would turn the key all the way back to off and then turn it back on, we could recreate the problem when it was messing up. So that led me to start, because I was starting to run out of ideas, started to think maybe the PCM was shorting out or something like that. I checked all the powers and grounds to the PCM. They all seem fine. Like I said, I checked all the 5-volt reference sensors. And bear in mind, this thing, when it does it, it's so fast, like sometimes it won't even do it. Like it's extremely intermittent, and it's one of these situations where you can pull your hair out, because if you don't give it gas, it'll die instantly. And then, the next time you crank it, it might start up and run fine for the next hour. So that's what we were dealing with. So I made a mistake. I shouldn't have put that crank sensor on. I should have put a scope on it and made sure. And on these aren't even 5-volt reference sensors. They go to your ignition coil, and then the ignition module sends out a signal to the ECM. So not that that matters, but I probably would have caught the crank sensor dropping out if I had a scope on it. And I don't know. I mean, basically, we just kind of stumbled upon what this would have been. I was kind of running out of ideas. I thought maybe the PCM is shorting out, but I didn't want to replace the PCM without knowing for sure. And we were just kind of going through my little troubleshoot checklist that I do almost every car, and was just trying to think logically what could be the problem. So anyway, we get down to this. I pull the computer out, and this is where I started running into all kinds of misinformation with ShopKey Pro and a couple of the wiring diagrams that I had. Right now I'm probed in. This is number 19 on connector 1 of the PCM. There's two connector 1 and connector 2. According to the diagram, this wire here should be pink, it's white. And this wire here is your voltage battery to the ECM. And that wire should be red and it's orange. But whatever, I checked down the line on this. You can actually see the numbers on the PCM stating 19, 20, 21, whatever. So that was 19, that was 20. Anyway, I looked farther down the row, and a lot of those colors were matching up with my wiring diagram. So I knew I was on the right wire. So I probed into them, and when it messes up, and I had this multimeter reading the ignition switch, and I had this multimeter reading the, could have got a scope and just did them both at the same time, but anyway, I didn't. So anyway, this one is going to your battery voltage for the PCM. When it messes up, the one that goes to the battery voltage stays at a steady battery voltage. But but the ignition switch drops down to 3 volts, 3 to 5 volts, somewhere in there. And the car won't run. It barely run. It cuts off and on. And a lot of times, if you don't give it gas, it'll just shut off right away. And when the car is running fine, it has battery voltage to that wire. So now we've eliminated the computer. We've eliminated all the sensors, anything to do with fuel, spark. We're down to ignition switch basically. And I'll go over and show you kind of how screwed up ShopKey Pro's diagrams it is on this. I mean, normally it's pretty good. I think a lot of it is because this car is older, and the information. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I have better luck with newer cars than I do with cars that are 20 years old with ShopKey Pro. ShopKey Pro, if you don't know, is a service for mechanics. It's about $180 a month. Gives you wiring diagrams, labor rates, procedures, all kinds. It's very good. It's online service. It's very good, but it seems like with wiring diagram, stuff like that. It's kind of hit and miss. I've had several times where the wire wasn't the right color, or what they said was the right color, or whatever. So I don't, I'm sure it's a big pain in the butt to get information from the manufacturers or whatever. But I mean, they do. I don't know how you would live without it in this day and age. But there could be a lot of improvements to it, I think, and they do improve it here and there. But anyway, I'll show you what I've come down to and why I believe it's an ignition switch, and we'll go from it now and see what this multimeter does. Turn it off. Start it. Turn it off. Start it. Go ahead. You hear the edges popping. Let it die. So start it. Start it. All right. Now you see there, it's running good, and we're at battery voltage. Shut it off. You see there, when it's running good, we were at battery voltage on the PCM, and when it wasn't running, we were at 3 volts. So we're having a massive voltage drop from the ignition switch over to the PCM. I think the ignition switch is bad, what's going on here. You can wiggle the wire. I don't think it's a wiring problem. You can wiggle all the wires around, and they're fine. But when the car runs good, we should have battery voltage to this wire here, to the PCM. And you can see there, when it was running good, it did have it. And then when it was running bad, we had about 3 volts. So let's try it again, see what it does. See there, it's running good. And we're at battery voltage. Shut it down. Turn it on. Shut it down. Turn it on. Shut it down. It's very intermittent. When it does it, it's very intermittent. Shut it down. One more time. Alright, shut it down. Alright, so when it does it, it's very intermittent. I'm going to let it sit a little while, and then we'll come back out and check it again. It seems like when it sits for a while is when it really starts screwing up. But I think we're pretty confident now that it's the ignition switch. You can see we had 3 volts, now we have... Cut it off. Leave it off. So anyway, I'm going to let it cool down a little bit. It seems like the longer it sits, the more it wants to mess up. And then once it's done messing up, it'll be done messing up until it sits again. So I'm going to let it sit about a half hour. We'll come back out just to double check. But I think that's a pretty definitive answer what happened there, what's happening. All right, so this is the output on the, this is the output connector right here. And I got number 19 marked, which is supposed to be the ignition switch. So if you look here, 19 is supposed to be pink, ignition positive voltage. So it's actually a white color, but that's beside, whatever, we figured it out. So here's the wiring diagram. Here's number 19, and that goes from your PCM. Now on a different wiring diagram, if you look at the PCM diagram, it shows it the 19 going straight to your ignition switch with nothing else on the circuit. If you look at the ignition switch diagram, it shows that you have the theft deterrent module and the dash integration module, which is basically the BCM, I think, on these cars, wired into that same wire. And anyway, there should be 12 volts coming out of here because you're going straight from a power source down. Turn the key, different positions, and that's what sends a signal out. So I don't believe either one of these is pulling the signal down or pulling the voltage down. I believe it's the ignition switch itself. Only because sometimes you can turn the key and nothing happens, and other times, if you hold it, and then it'll start. And I really can't unplug either one of these and see. I've already checked. remains constant voltage on this side. So the only thing that I can see that would bring it down, and then this one here, this is number 21 on C2. It shows it going ignition switch. But if you look at both the wiring diagrams for the computer, yeah, that's number 23. According to connector on C1, it's not used. And if you go to C2, 23 and 24 are not used. So why is there a wire coming from the PCM up to here that supposedly is used? I don't know. So again, I would like to unplug these two and see if the problem comes up, but you really can't unplug these two because this one is the body control module and this one is a theft deterrent. So if you unplug either one of these and try to start it, it probably won't start. And more than likely, I don't know. I mean, they could be shorting out and pulling the voltage down to this power control module. But right now, I'm going to take a pretty educated guess, and we're going to replace the ignition module or ignition switch and test it out and see if the problem reoccurs. Like I said, the problem with this whole thing is it's a split-second thing, and it does it when it wants to. And sometimes it doesn't do it at all, and then other times it may do it 3 or 4 times in a row, and then it won't do it again for another hour. So it's very hard to get a definitive answer or get to really dig into it. You got to get everything ready and just catch it at the right time. So yeah, I'm going to assume this switch is bad, and it's losing power to the PCM. That's why it's cutting off. I've already got the ignition switch, so to do the job, you have to pull the radio and stuff out. So we'll get in the car and start on that, and hopefully get this thing out of here. This has been, I spent about a day on it last week, and then I got piled up with cars, so I took it back to him. Luckily, it's not his main car, so I was able to take it back to his house, leave it there for a little while, about a week, and then come back and get it yesterday. And I got in it yesterday, started up fine, drove it home, ran fine. Took it, ran it off and on a couple times, was fine. Came back out like a half hour later, then it messed up. Was able to start pulling off some of those sensors one by one and plugging them back in to see if it's 5-volt reference bringing it down. And of course that wasn't it, but then all of a sudden it was fine again, and then we had to wait a while and come back. So it's just been a huge headache. And I'm about 99% sure we're on the right track with this ignition switch now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that, replace it, and I believe this car will be fixed. And with the crank sensor, since I made the mistake and replaced it when it didn't need it, I'll eat that cost. It was I don't charge people for my mistakes, so I know a lot of shops would just throw a computer at this car or throw a bunch of sensors at it and hope for the best or believe they fixed it, and that's not how I operate here. Unless the part really I'm not saying if something breaks when I take it off, that's not my fault. Sure, I'll charge the customer for that, but something like this where I misdiagnosed it the first time, I'll eat the labor and the part cost on that because it's just not fair to someone else to pay for your guesswork. On this here, I'm extremely confident this is going to fix it. So, everybody makes mistakes. Usually you get a couple of these a year that'll kind of stump you like this. Unfortunately, I've had about 3 or 4 this year that have been kicking my butt. But I think we're on the right track with this one, and we'll start pulling it apart and get on it. All right, so we're in the belly of the beast here. The first thing you're going to do, you got to remove the radio ignition switches right here, like I said before. So this whole panel has to come off. It pops down. There's 2 retaining clips on the top here. They're just these little push clips. So you're going to have to get those out, and then it should pop out. Lower your, man, it is hot today. It's almost October, and it's like 105 degrees today with the heat index. I'm dying in here. So anyway, lower your steering column, and then this whole panel should come out. You're going to have various wires and stuff for this kind of stuff. Go ahead and unplug those. And then once you get this out, set it off to the side, and we're going to go for this radio next. All right, so this radio is really easy to get out. You just pull on all 4 of these, you push them in, and then it just pulls straight out, and there's no wiring harness, which is nice. The actual module is back there, so it just slides in. The antenna and the actual wires, or whatever. So here's your switch, and you got 2 10mm bolts here, and there is a cable that goes back to there that we have to get loose. We'll have to release that. You have to have the key to do that. You have to turn the key, and then I'll show you when I pull it out, but you got 2 10s right here. Those have to come out, and then you can push this in and kind of bring it out this way, and there's a bunch of wires that you have to unhook. So we'll unhook those, and then I'll show you how to unhook that cable back there. You do have this on that plastic piece you have to remove. It just pops right off. This one just basically, as soon as I pulled on that other part, it just popped right off without me even touching it. So like I said, you got 2 10s here. Go ahead and take those off. Now, I will tell you, this doesn't want to come out. This, I'll show you a second here. This round piece right here does not want to go through this hole very easily. You got to coax it out. So it does go through there, but a few times I have done one of these, I've always had to angle it and move it a certain way. There's also a little retainer clip back here. Just push that in, and that'll release it. And this thing should be pretty loose in here, and then just finagle it. I won't be able to show you on camera, but just finagle it out. Get it over here by the radio. It can be done. I know sometimes it seems like it can't even be done the way it acts, but it can be done. And once you get it over here, you can start disconnecting the wires and start pulling out towards you, and then we'll get that cable out. All right, so when you take those 2 10mm bolts out, you got this clip right here that goes into the dash up here. You'll see it when you get under there. You have to push this in and kind of pull this out, and then you got to bend it enough to get it past that bracket so that you can pull it out. I'm going to have to be honest with you, there's probably going to be a lot of cussing involved, and you're going to think there's no way that can come out, but just trust me, it will come out. You just have to get this past that bracket. Take a screwdriver, whatever you can, and just almost to the point of breaking it. It won't break if you're careful, but it's a pretty stupid design, and it'll make you cuss and make you wonder if this even comes out. So once you get it out to here, it's just a matter of unplugging. You got 2 or 3 electrical connectors. You got your light, and your light just turns like that and then comes off. And then you have another one. You have this one here, which unplugs, and then you have your 2 big connectors, and those you just push in on the back side and pull them out. And then you have this cable right here, and that's the one where you need the key. You got to turn the key and then push on this, and it'll release. So that's where I'm at on it. I'm going to take those connectors off, and then I'll show you how to release this cable. The connectors are pretty self-explanatory. You'll be able to figure it out. But to release the cable, you have to have the key in there and turn it, and then push on this retainer right here, and it'll pull out. So I'll show you that in a second after I get these other connectors off. Now, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to go ahead and start it. I still have all the connectors hooked up. And you can see it's running. If I take a screwdriver or something and just tap it right here. See the car? It died on me, and it was starting to do that fluttering like it does. Yeah, it's running bad now. We really upset it. It may not start again. All right, let me give it some gas. All right, I got it started. Let's see if we tap it again, what happens. See that? And that's the problem that we have right there, where it flutters back and forth. So At this point, I think we can eliminate the body control module and the theft deterrent module, and we can definitively say 100% this ignition switch is bad. You shouldn't be able to tap on that. I'm not tapping on it very hard, and you can see that it's doing the exact same thing that it does when everything's installed. So I think 100% that's the problem. We were on the right track with checking the signal out to the PCM, and yeah, so now I feel a lot better. I mean, I felt pretty good about it anyway, but now I know 100% this ignition switch is bad. And so anyway, I just wanted to show you that real quick. And I still haven't disconnected the wires yet, so the only thing I got disconnected was the light, which I think is burnt out anyway. So anyway, I'm going to get those off, and then I'll show you how to get this cable off here, and then we'll put the new one in. Alright, once you get all the wires off, you got this cable here still. So what you need to do is turn your key to the on position. I'm going to try to do this one-handed. And you have a indentation right here. And once you push that down, this should pull out. Now see, if you turn the key off and push this down, this tab will push down, but this cable won't come off. It won't pull out. So you have to turn the key on position and pull this tab down right here, and then it slides right out. So this is what it looks like. You got your two big connectors here. You got your light. Then you have this connector here, comes out. So it needs to take the cylinder out, because when you get an ignition switch, when you buy a new one, you're just going to get the switch. You won't get the key in the lock. I think, oh yeah, it's right here. Right here is a tab. And I'm pretty sure the key has to be in the on position. You just push this tab down and it'll release it out of the switch. I'll go over to the workbench and we'll try it out. I'm pretty sure that's how it is on these. It's been a while, but that's how most of them are. You just put the key in a certain position, push down on the tab right here, and then this whole cylinder should release, and then you can slide into the new one and lock it in. So I'll go over to the workbench and do that, and then we'll start putting the new one back together. Alright, so here we are on the bench here. You got that tab right here, the slot right here. You can see that chrome tab right there. With the key out or in the off position, that will not push in. But if it's in the on position or the run position, you can just take a screwdriver and push down on that, and then you should be able to slide this whole thing out like that. And then all you do is just slide this into your new switch and then start putting it back on the dash. So here's that little retainer right here, and with the key on, it'll go up and down. See how it disappears? And with the key out of it, it won't do that. So you got to have the key, turn it on, and then push it down, slide it out. So we're going to just slide this new one, this old cylinder in the new switch, and start putting it back together. All right, I got all the wires plugged in, and to get that cable back in, you just do the opposite. Well, you do the same thing. You turn the key on, and then that'll slide right in and click in. And if you remember before, I took my high-tech diagnostic tool, a screwdriver, and just tapped on this switch back here, and the car cut out and was doing all the same symptoms that it had before we changed it. So anyway, I'm going to start the car real quick. Car started, so we're going to take that high-tech tool, just tap on it slightly, and you can see the car still running good. So anyway, that's a confirmed fix on this. I'm glad, because sometimes stuff like this can really run you for the ringer. So we're just gonna I'm just gonna put this back together, plug it in. And so you just get it lined back up, line the two holes up here, and start your 10mm bolts. And then we'll go from there. I'm putting it back together. It's pretty much reverse of the opposite, but and you won't have to reprogram your key or anything, because you're using the same key lock and same key that you had before. The actual program is in this ring right here, and you're going to be reusing that, so there won't be any issues with if you're just changing the ignition switch. There won't be any issues with programming, security, or anything like that. These cars have like a long process of reprogramming the key Takes about 30 minutes. You know, the newer cars, you can plug a scan tool in and program the key real fast. With this one, it's a long process to do it. You turn the key on, wait for security light to go off, turn the key off. It's like 3 times, and it takes 10 minutes each time. So anyway, you won't have to deal with any of that on this car. So I'm going to go ahead and set it back in there and get those bolts started, and then I'll start putting this interior back together. All right, I got the inside back together, and in case anyone was wondering, you can see I got the 2 probes here, actually the wire piercers on the computer. And the reason why I did that is because on this particular computer, the pins are very small, and if you jam a T-pin in there or something like that, you have a good chance of wrecking that pin or the wire, and I don't want to do that on this. And so I try to be at least evasive as possible whenever I'm probing wires or doing something like this. But sometimes there's just no way around it. And of course, this is going to have like a little pinhole in each one of those wires where those probes are at. So in a situation like that where I don't think there's any way around it, get yourself some of this electrical brush-on tape. It's by Blue Magic, and it's got a brush on it. And you brush it over the hole, and that covers it up, and it hardens. You wait, a few minutes. And once that hardens, it's just like having tape on it. And then what I do after that is I put some electrical tape over that. So we're talking about a tiny hole here in the insulation, but it is in the computer, and it's in a spot. It's inside the air box there, so it should be fine. But either way, instead of just putting regular tape on it, I always put that liquid electrical tape on there, and that seals it up from water and anything else, and then I put tape over it. So that's the reason why. I know some people freak out when you pierce wires or whatever, but if you're going to diagnose cars and do that sort of thing, there's times when there's no way around it. So I usually like to put a T-pin in there or something like that, but these were so tight in this particular computer that I didn't want to risk spreading the pin or messing the pin up, and then I got a whole nother headache in front of me. So anyway, these are just 2 small holes. I'll glue them up, tape them up, and that'll be the end of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together. Car runs and starts fine. Of course, we tapped on it, nothing there. So the car's fixed. It's good to go. I'll probably end the video here. You know, like I said, it just goes to show, even someone like me that's been doing it for a very long time makes mistakes. I put that crank sensor on, and didn't take precautions to make sure. I wanted to put the scope on it, but it was just doing it so rarely that I'm working by myself, trying to catch it doing it, and have the scope hooked up and look at the scope while it's doing it and trying to keep it running. I just took an educated guess on it with the age of the car and the mileage and what it's doing, and it bit me in the butt. And luckily he doesn't need this car every day, so he was cool with bringing it back for a little bit and then coming and picking it back up. Normally I don't like to do that, but this problem, the way it was popping up, and the randomness of it, it was very hard to get a handle on what was even going on with it. I really thought it was losing spark, and I put the fuel pressure gauge on there and all that, and I knew it wasn't losing fuel, but I suspected spark, and I was doing a lot of testing on the ignition module, and after I put the crank on, I tested the cam and the crank and all that, and everything seemed to be fine. And anyway, then I started thinking maybe the computer's bad or it's getting pulled down. So it took kind of a long road to get to the ignition switch, but we got there, and I think it's kind of an uncommon problem. It would have been better if the ignition switch just stopped working altogether, honestly, because then you could figure it out without taking the long way. But that happens sometimes. Like I said, as a mechanic, you'll get 2 or 3 of these a year maybe, where it'll just fight you to the end. And this was one of them, so it's fine. We all learned something, and next time I get one, I will wait until I have somebody with me and do what I should have done the first time and scope it out and make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. So anyway, that's about it. If you have a GM and you're having weird problems like that, don't overlook the ignition switch. like I said, just tapping it with a screwdriver made the car die. And if I was originally, I thought maybe it was a wiring issue, and I was tugging on a bunch of wires trying to find maybe a short or something, and nothing. Once the car would run fine, you couldn't get it to screw up. So anyway, that's it. I'm gonna button this thing up and ship it on out. Appreciate you watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like us on Facebook, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.